I was a pastor at a church. We had a man who was a great servant in our church and leader in our church and had been for a number of years. He developed esophageal cancer, went through lots of different types of treatment. It's a really great story. God healed him, and then the cancer eventually came back, and a man in his early 50s with two children in high school passed away. We had his funeral. The family have been very good friends of ours. We're very close to them. And for a few weeks, the widow was not happy with me. And at first I really struggled with what was going on, and I realized what was happening. For better or for worse, many people kind of view the pastor as representative of God. And God had taken her husband, and she was angry with God. And so since the pastor kind of represents God, she was, by extension, angry with me. And once I realized what was going on, I gave her some space and distance. And over time, she came back around, and we had some talks about it later. They have remained, she has remained a friend over the years. But I want to talk today on Theology Thursday about this idea of being angry at God. Is it okay to be angry with God? And if it is, how do we handle it? And what are some of the positives and what are some of the dangers? So the Bible is full of people, who went through lots of difficult times. Abraham did, from the beginning. Eve loses one son because her other son kills him, and then the son who was the murderer is run off, and so she lost both sons. One is dead, and one is now a fugitive, wandering away from her. Certainly Noah saw people die. It was very difficult. Here you are locked into a box with a bunch of stinky animals, and people all around are dying in a flood. Abraham and Sarah unable to conceive, and all the issues that came with that. We're now just a handful of chapters into the Bible. And as you go through the Bible, people just had lots of woes and heartaches and disappointments and plenty of reasons to be angry. So let's talk a little bit about this being angry at God. First of all, I want to answer the question very clearly. Yes, it is okay to be angry with God. The reality is if we're angry, then we're angry. It's an emotion that we have. And the Bible actually has a lot to say about people describing their anger. Let me just read for you some verses that express anger. Habakkuk 1:2, O Lord, how long will I cry for help, and you will not hear? The Psalms are full of them. For example, Psalm 13, how long, O Lord, will you forget me? Forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? Psalm 6 has several statements. My soul is greatly troubled, but you, O Lord, how long? When are you going to do something? And again in Psalm 6, later in verse 6, it says, I am weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with weeping. My eye wastes away because of grief. Psalm 10, verse 1, why, O Lord, do you stand far away? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? Psalm 89, verse 46, how long, O Lord, will you hide yourself forever? How long will your wrath burn like fire? Lamentations, which we should expect some of this in the book called Lamentations. Lamentations chapter 5, verse 20, why do you forget us forever? Why do you forsake us for so many days? Maybe one of the most famous is Psalm 22, verse 1, which is quoted by Jesus when he's on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? So the Bible has a number of places where people express frustration and anger with God. So it's clearly okay. Since it's an emotion, like everything else in our life, we should take it to God. So there's nothing wrong with saying, God, I'm angry. God, I don't understand. God, I'm frustrated. One of my favorite statements is found in Psalm 73. Why do the wicked prosper? We all ask this question. Why does it seem like bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people. And so the psalmist wrestled with the same thing. So it's not uncommon for you and me to ask, God, why have you done this? God, why did you let this happen? Why did you let it happen to me? I don't understand. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. Be honest with God. So let me share with you some positives of doing this, some dangers of doing this, and then kind of see if I can help us understand the way that it works. So what are some of the positives? Well, the reality is if you only pray to God in ways you think He wants to hear, one, you're lying to yourself because that's not really how you feel. Two, you're lying to God because you're not expressing with Him how you really feel. And number three, you're deceiving yourself because you think somehow you can hide from God the way you really feel. Look, if you're really angry with God, be honest. God, I'm angry. I'm upset. This tragedy has happened in my life. This horrible thing has happened to me or my family, and I'm disappointed and frustrated and I'm angry and I don't know what you're doing and I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. And God, I'm angry. Just be honest with God, because your heart is never going to be healed until you're honest with God. God, I'm asking you, help me. Like the psalmist, God, how long are you going to stand afar off? I don't understand what's going on. It feels like you hide your face. It feels like you've forsaken me. I feel abandoned. God, how long till you give me an answer? How long till you step in and fix this hurt that I feel? And so we need to be honest with God, because the reality is the beginning of the healing process is to confess, God, I'm angry. I don't want to be like this, but I want to be honest with you. I'm furious. I can't believe you let this happen. I can't believe that you brought this into my life, that you took this person from me, that I lost my job, that whatever, my parents got divorced, or whatever it is that you're angry about, that you just lay that out there before the Lord. There's a real need to be honest. The reality is if you sin, you confess it. That's just honesty with God. God, I lied. God, I lusted. God, I was jealous. Whatever it is that, we just want to be honest. And so it's very good for you. Somebody says that, people say confession is good for the soul, which is not actually a biblical quote. But the idea of confession being good for the soul is not just confession of sin, but it's confession of, I'm angry. I'm frustrated. Because the reality is we should confess our joys to the Lord as well. Man, God was a great day. God, I had a great night last night. It was awesome. Thank you. And so just there's a great advantage to being very open and honest with God. But there are also some real dangers in being angry with God. Obviously, we can become rebellious against God. Our anger could be misplaced. Our anger could be not justified. It could be very, very selfish. God, why didn't I get that promotion? Well, maybe you're a better fit for the job where you're at. Maybe that would have created stress. It could have caused health problems or other issues. That's what made me, sometimes our anger is really because we're just being selfish. But sometimes our anger is the way that it should be. If a drunk driver crosses a line and takes away a loved one in the prime of their life, it's okay to be angry with that person. It's okay to be angry with the situation. It's okay to be angry with God. God, why did you let that happen? It's really more of I don't understand what God is doing, and maybe frustration is a better word than anger. But anyway, it's okay. But we can be careful that we don't begin to blame God, and that we become, our relationship with God is ruptured and ruptured and destroyed, and that we don't find ourselves really becoming negative towards God. There's a difference between being honest with God about my feelings and becoming very negative towards God, type of deal. So let me see if I can help us understand what I'm saying. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15, we find a very, very important statement. And I'm going to read it because I want to make sure we understand it. I want to make sure I spell out because I think it's a very significant verse for anger with God and other people. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. So here's what he's saying. It's okay to express your anger with God, but we're expressing our anger with God because we want to be honest with God because we know He loves us and He cares for us and He's big enough to let us dump our frustrations on Him, to let Him know how we really feel. God, trust me, God can take it. And God doesn't resent it. He wants us to come to Him. Come to me, all ye who are burdened and heavy laden, and I will give you rest, is what Jesus would say. So we bring those to Him, and we bring it to Him. God, I'm angry that you took my spouse when I still had kids in high school. I'm angry that, whatever it is that has happened, and that you don't understand how God is operating. But be careful. Be very careful. Because that anger left unchecked, that anger not given over to God, that anger not asking God to help me work through this, and God help me to find the peace that only you can give that passes all understanding. If we allow that anger to continue to boil within us, if we allow that anger to sink deep within us, it will take root within us. And anger left undealt with becomes bitterness. And bitterness then affects who we are. And a bitter person destroys not just themselves, but people around them. That's why Hebrews 12:15 says, beware lest any root of bitterness in you, it springs up. It begins to grow and flourish. And when it does, it defiles many. It can destroy many. And I've seen people over the years who were bitter. They never really took their anger to God. They were never honest with God. They never prayed that God would bring them through that anger. Their expression of their anger with God was not an expression of their relationship with God, but instead they allowed it to sink deep within inside them and to take root inside of them. And they began to see everything in the world through a lens of anger. And it develops into hatred and bitterness. And they became bitter towards God, that God didn't do anything good and anything right, and God's a horrible person who has destroyed their life, and His goal is to destroy everybody's life. They just become very, very bitter. And that bitterness just pours out and hurts lots and lots of people. So it's okay to be angry with God, but you cannot let that anger reside. The Bible says to be angry and sin not. The Bible says don't let the sun go down upon your anger. Both those, by the way, come from the book of Ephesians. So here's the way I see it working. My wife and I have been married for 36 years as of now. And in those 36 years, I know it would shock you to find out that I've actually been angry at her a few times. Sometimes justified, and probably most of the time not justified. But when I express my anger to my wife, it's not because I want to end our relationship. It's because we have a relationship. And I'm expressing to her what I'm really feeling. But I don't want it to end the relationship. Listen, if you let that anger continue, it becomes bitterness. And that marriage is going to disintegrate. It's going to crumble because that bitterness is going to take root in your life. It's going to affect everything. And now when they do something nice, you don't see it as something nice. You see it as not caring or it wasn't good enough. You see everything in a very negative, angry, frustrated, disappointed bitterness. So you express anger, but even though I express anger with her, I want the marriage to be good. I love my wife. I trust my wife. I want to be with my wife. So even though I express anger, I don't allow that to be the only emotion. I don't allow that to linger. I don't spend day after day after day after day after day and weeks and months brooding over this thing that I was angry about. I express it, but then I need to move on. I need to be healed from that. So what I'm saying is, when you're angry with God, express it, but don't brood over it. Don't linger over it. Don't sit there and constantly reflect on it, that somehow you're angry with God, because that will begin to take over as the only way you view God. And then there'll be a bitterness. It'll spring up in you and defile many. So express the anger. It's okay to be honest with God, But we are expressing our anger because we really want to move beyond that. We really want to see that relationship with God restored to one of joy, one of goodness and wholesomeness, one of hope. We want it to be a great relationship. And sometimes that great relationship means I need to express my anger and my frustration that God has not operated in a way that I understand. And God, here's how I feel about that. But we're expressing it to God because of our relationship with God, and we want it to continue to be a good one and a great one. And a God of grace and mercy will hear us. And when we express our anger, He will pour out His love and grace, sometimes in ways that we never imagined. Because we've been open and honest with God, we've opened up our heart to Him. God will then come and fill our heart with His grace and His love. So it's okay to be angry with God, but don't hold on to that anger. Don't make it the primary way you think or focus on God, because that'll turn into bitterness. And bitterness, which is sin, will then begin to destroy your life and others' lives. So be angry, but angry with a God of grace and mercy and compassion, who will fill your heart and will replace that anger once again with His joy. So be honest, so we can have this great relationship with God and does not turn into bitterness. So if today you're angry with God about something, express it to Him, and then pray that God will help you to move beyond that to the kind of relationship that we want to have with Him and that He wants us to have with Him as well. So I hope this helps you. If you're feeling some emotional frustration with God and the why did you let this happen sort of thing, it's okay, but don't allow that to take over your life, because it will dominate and destroy you and many others. And neither we nor God nor you want that. So I hope that God blesses you and God pours out His love and grace upon you when things are good and when things are bad, when you can express joy to the Lord and when you need to express anger as well.